Okay, so Android Studio to start with, in the left hand side, your recently created projects should be there, and the right hand side from here we are going to take it forward. Start a new Android Studio project, and should be taken through a window. And here, probably you can go through whatever the defaults been given, except one. Maybe you should not click the Kotlin support now at this point. It's hiding below to that. There is a Kotlin checkbox should be there because of this. Okay, let me see. Hopefully it is unchecked for me as well. So I'm just assuming. If it is checked, make sure you uncheck it, because by default, the first, the boilerplate code, whatever it creates, it would have been a Kotlin. You can change it later point of time, but I would still recommend uncheck it, because we don't need to think about Kotlin point of view at this scenario. And the company name, this is what actually your domain or maybe your application package file name, or which is something important for your application to be listed on Play Store. So Google Play Store maintains your package name as a application identifier. Usually we give a company domain, say like Airtel India dot something like that. It's not necessary to be a valid one, but just a kind of an inference which talks about the ownership of it. So I've kept it in this way. You can also keep anything. I would recommend at least 2 to 3 level deeper you keep it. Nothing but it will prepare folders for you and keep that inside. So at least 2 or 3 level deeper you keep it, and make it separated by dot. And by default your applications are going to be kept inside a folder Android Studio project. Leave it as it is. It should be in the user folder and it will be keeping them there. Any name, any name. Okay, go ahead. The next one, it's very important here. This is probably guided through by your managers to start with, but at least Google is smart enough to give you a suggestion, saying that what is the minimum version you are trying to support in terms of Android device which is there in the market. Android versions have come through a various upgrades, starting from what I talked the pre-release version to now. We are right now having Android version level probably going ahead API level 28 P. So it's alphabetical format, different names given. So ice cream sandwich, jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, and something. Now it now orient beyond to the unnamed version, which is also in the speculation. So name could be anything. But what Android recommends you, the least version what you can support is the API level 15, nothing but Android 4.0.3. Because Google also gives you an idea, your app will run approximately 100% of device, because Google knows based on the cloud instances where it is happening to Google servers, it identifies, okay, certain versions already obsolete, which is not there in the market. So it is somehow the Google has identified this is the one right now least version running in the maybe in the Google ecosystem spread across the world. So this is the least one we are going to support. Any OS or any Android version below to this version, our app will not work. Below to that, above to that is going to work definitely. So below to that is not going to work. Of course, we don't need to worry about, because according to Google, this is more than enough. So I'm not going to touch anything. Of course, I am not going to specifically do a targeted application, but we will see them as going ahead. At this point, our target is going to be on the phone and tablet. Let's move next. Okay, here it is. This is something, a templates, which is already created for you. So what is the first screen you would like to build? I was talking about, like, there in Swings I was talking about frames. So the initial screen we call it as a frame. Here we are going to call the initial screen as an activity. The frame kind of thing, here the name is going to be activity. So it is saying basic activity, different type of activity. It is saying, like, do you want this kind of template to start with? I am not going to stick to any specific. I am going to choose the empty activity. Probably I'll add the rest of the thing through the coding instead of depending on certain templates. We'll create them. So I'm going to go ahead with the empty activity.
So these can be starting points if you want to develop a specific application.
Yes, these are all the very first one you are trying to create a project. Okay. Okay, it's trying to prepare by hope.
Empty activity.
Start. Okay. Okay. Empty activity. Now it is asking what is the name of an activity you'd like to keep. Initially we started giving that UI class some name we gave, right? So for a class to create. Here it is asking you through the GUI kind of thing. So instead we don't need to manually create anything. Okay, the very first activity I'm going to create is going to be just have a main activity. That layout file, those things I'll come back. Keep whatever the defaults right now it is showing. Then click finish. You should see a little bit of a delay sometime because you know we are going to work on a different hardware now. Though it is also accepting it is it is having a Java runtime. I mean it is having a capability to execute your Java bytecode, and technically this is going to be a lower power device. Your application is going to run on a comparatively, if you compare the computer, the phone is going to be a kind of inferior device. So you will have to have that in mind throughout the development. We have to restrict ourselves on resource consuming strategy what we write. Maybe I should not write too much of the threaded programs, or maybe instead of skipping certain recommendations, we try to have our own. That it cannot work in sometimes. So though the Java specific code we are going to write here, what is specified by Android SDK, we are going to restrict ourselves to use that alone. Android provides various alternatives than a conventional typical Java scenario can be put into work. Why don't I write a JFrame here? The question may come. No, sorry. That's what the issue is coming here. I cannot take an advantage of in a computer on the phone. So the Android operating system, though it consists a virtual machine which could convert or execute your bytecode, it is not something given by an Oracle or maybe what you call the vendors who created Java Swing or something. No, it has a capability to execute things, but provided you should follow the methodology given by Android, the documented methodology, or application programming interface, what it tells through which we can get our things done. Okay, so it's going to run for a few seconds. I would recommend once most of your computers are pretty powerful, but you will have to wait. See, this thing is going for like it's loading and doing a couple of things. You have to wait until things settle down. So till the time, not to update the code or don't do anything, just wait. It should complete without any errors. If you have any errors or any kind of this thing or any it could not what you call compiled or maybe try again, those kind of scenario comes mean your internet access somewhere is restricted. Dependencies were properly could not be downloaded. Literally it may be downloading various dependencies. Technically I can also tell probably where the dependency lists are there, but at least in the left hand side there is one choice called Android, which is something the file explorer kind of thing what we had in the Eclipse. Here if you open the Gradle script, you need to open the build.gradle specific to module. Here you may see there are a couple of dependencies. So usually the Gradle, I mean the dependency format usually like this. And if you see that it has some dependency called app-compat, constraint, JUnit, runner, espresso, test frameworks also there. There are plenty of things it would download once the very first time your project is being set up. So not only this, there may be other dependencies as well. So internet restriction would lead into a kind of situation where your Gradle process could not get completed. So you will have to make sure the unrestricted internet and also an administrative privilege. Assuming you have administrative privilege at this point, maybe you're working on Windows where you have not been provided administrative privilege, mean naturally the file writing feature or option might not be there for the given application. So make sure the administrative access as well as unrestricted internet access being provided to you before concluding why the Android Studio behaving weirdly. Okay, it should complete in this way. We'll come back to these areas first. I mean, maybe a later point of time. And in the left hand side, I'm seeing three folders. So let me minimize this Gradle script because it looks like a kind of a JSON stuff that we will go back later. There is a folder called app. I have three folders given after that. Manifest, Java, RES mean resource folder. So three different folders, you should end up seeing them. If I expand them, the manifest contains one file, an XML file, a formatted XML formatted file. It calls its name Android manifest.xml. And if I expand Java, I've been provided three different package system. In that, two are dependent on test frameworks. We're also going to do TDD, I mean test driven development. So we'll go back to them quite often. We need to write test cases to validate our logic is correct, to validate what we have done correct. But being a kind of what you call a device oriented thing, we also have a unit test and also instrumentation test also included here. So you can, because the test case involves writing that particular application install on the phone and how the phone behaves. So those things we have to include while we write the test cases. So those two things are there. Anything specific to device-based testing, the code we will write it over here, or anything specific to just a plain Pojo or plain old Java classes you need to validate, we'll write the test cases over there. So these two are related to test. We are not going to touch them. Now, the one which I am going to expand is having a name called main activity, which is the one you write it in the right hand side, which is right now open. This is a Java file because .java. Okay, so I will come back to this. I'm also going to expand the folder called resource. I've been given 4 folders in this case. One drawable, then is layout, something map, values. There are a couple of things are there. Technically, I'm not going to play around much. Chances of creating my own folders might be little limited. I cannot create however way I want. Only the SDK specific folders can be created further going. Drawable refers any image resources or media resources what you are going to use in your application. So in your application you will have a logo, some images you like to use, PNG, JPEG. We are going to keep it over here. And we can also create image resources directly in runtime through XML. We will see that. And layout, this is the one distinguished from our the so far thing what we did through the swing. We have option to create layouts. But this file is going to be form of XML. What I can probably assume, it is going to look like an HTML code. To create a design, I usually, in the browser, I use HTML. HTML kind of a tag-based language where you will define a design, attributions, a kind of a CSS related rules. Similar to that here I'm going to do, but this time it's going to be an XML side. The map typically, usually the launcher icons, we'll come back to that. And the values contain further couple of files. So the colors which you are going to use in your application, those attributions are going to be placed here. Strings or any constants you are going to use, which is going to be kept here. And the styles or any theme what you are going to use would be kept here. You can open and see them what exactly they are. But these are all the things like what Android Studio has kept them. And going ahead, I'm particularly interested on main activity. If I open this, I was talking about this main activity is nothing but the class what we just created, which inherits from something called app compat activity. Okay, it inherits something from a kind of a class called activity, which is exactly somehow similar to the frame. It could prepare a view or a kind of a frame for you, and then you can add a button, text fields, or anything on the top. So similar, same concept. The inheritance has come. We don't need to know about how the app compatibility has been written, how it handles those things, because it's totally hidden from just inherited, start using them. And also I have been left with the one function called onCreate and couple of arguments, and we don't need to connect with the public static void main hereafter. We have nothing to think about it hereafter. Now we are going to think on the point of what is main activity and going ahead, but it has one function by default to make it specified. To test this thing, you are going to need an emulator or a real phone. You can directly attach your Android phone having the developer settings enabled, and of course I'm going to use throughout because uh, testing on the phone gives us a couple of privileges. The changes could be faster, and there are various other benefits also. Bluetooth or any kind of driver specific thing we can test it, whereas the emulator might not have all the access of the real hardware one. Otherwise you may need to depend on an emulator. So emulator instances can be found. If you see, there is a tiny little icon. Second, there is a, it's all hidden. Okay, yeah, tools. Go to AVD Manager, Android Virtual Device Manager. So in the tools, there is a link called AVD Manager. You will be given option to create a virtual device. You would have to create it. By default, you don't have created. So create a virtual device, and you will be given a choice here. See, it's a bit slightly shrunken though, but you will see the choice. So it's a skin of a kind of a phone model. So pixel or whatever screen you choose it, and go ahead and click next. In that, whatever you have downloaded will be available as a choice, because I purposely did not download any emulators not to slow my operating system. But here, whatever the latest you pick it up, make sure the image is of x86 or 64 something, because emulators created by the Intel based one, because your systems are Intel based one, the processor is an Intel based one, it will have a better performance if you use the same Intel image for testing, because that's the reason that at the end of your Android installation, studio installation, it would have asked something specific to Intel's things to be. So here you need to download it. Once you download, naturally you will have option to click next and complete it. So this particular part you would have to do before test and verify the device. So here the link is available in the tools AVD manager, and go ahead, follow the procedures and download the respective. Mostly for your case, one version would have got already downloaded. So then you can choose that and of course click next. If it is not there, you will also be given option to download, but see, I couldn't scroll it, but that option is there in the right hand side because the screen is a bit smaller.
So, SDK partially
Yeah.
installed where?
Pardon?
SDK was installed partially, so there is no choice for selecting an image.
Why SDK was partially installed? It was not
So we are all
completed.
getting the error.
What is that?
Unable to find valid certification part.
That's all your proxy dependent. The certificate related thing comes in the proxy. Proxy started playing because try on your hotspot, try to see that. That's the only choice you can see. Maybe your SDK itself was not installed properly. That might be a case also. You know that you can verify it. See, for example, here, instead of AVD, pick tools, see the SDK manager. SDK manager is the one, what are all the version you have downloaded. See, this thing should have a kind of a scenario. For example, my case, Android Oreo is there. That is more than enough to start with. And SDK tools, here, make sure the support repository related everything is downloaded. If it is not there, check it and download it. Because if partial installation is there, somewhere something may be missing. Make sure the Intel emulator which would have been installed, make sure all the support repository related things is installed, and the rest of the thing let it be as it is, but if at all required, we will upgrade it. This is scenario of my machine, may be different across yours.
It's the same, but in SDK update sites, it says Android repository is not.
It's not
SDK update sites.
here.
No, no.
In the update side, so
Next
third tab.
tab. Third tab.
Oh, here.
Android repository is not present.
This one is not there.
Yeah.
Okay, try downloading. Maybe it will try to add it. See, these are all the repositories. This is highly dynamic. It gets changed quite often.
So you are using LAN code?
Pardon? LAN card is there. You can try to use it from here. Interfaces are available.
Which LAN can you connect? Show me if you are.
I safely use my hotspot for this kind of thing. I never come into any kind of corporate kind of thing. So the hotspot is already crying with a very slow speed. Okay. So why don't your Airtel should be faster here? I hope.
So actually, it's all
using
proxy.
So proxy was.
So you are in the tiger den. You are using a different one. Fine. Okay. Fine. So try. Okay. Hopefully, if it is done. So SDK tools, make sure all the support repository related. We'll fix it up. I'll definitely come to your machine. I'll try to help you out. What kind of errors are happening? But in order to create emulator, that's the one. Otherwise, you can use, if you are having an Android phone, you can straight away start connecting it and start testing your device. But for that, you need to enable a couple of settings. So for that, I'm just screencasting my phone. You see that if you want to test it on the phone, there are few things you need to enable first. This is the interface more or less similar for all the phones. So you need to find maybe go to settings. The few things you need to enable in order to make your phone to be used for testing. First part, at the end you should see the developer options. If you don't see it, you would have to enable the developer option. To enable it, sometimes this option might not be there because by default it won't be enabled. You would have to go to about phone, go to something related to build. Yeah. So tap couple of times. You should be given a toast message saying that your developer feature or developer option is getting enabled. It's already enabled for me, that's why I'm tapping it again. You're already a developer, something it is saying. So you need to tap it a couple of times in order to get your developer option enabled. Now you will have a developer option. Once the developer option visible, make sure this one, that the developer option set to on. So you should be on, and also the USB debugging should be selected on. So this will make your phone connectable through the USB cable and it can talk to Android Studio. So these two settings, USB debugging and on. The stay awake you can keep it because while you test the phone, you don't want the phone to go, screen sleep or something should not happen. I mean, you can stay awake. You can do it. Otherwise, you don't need to enable it. So these two options you need to enable. It will also ask couple of security related questions. Can I trust this computer, kind of thing. You need to say always on or always accept something. That's very important. So once you have these enables done, these settings done, you should be able to see your phone in Android Studio by tapping on this lock at the bottom. Here, see that my phone is listed. So you should see once your developer options enabled, once you connect to USB, you should see your phone listed down. The logs are printing for the specific phone. So these procedures you would have to do in the very initial stage of your development. Without that, there is no point of going further. You would have to complete up to this state. Keep your Android Studio ready in working condition. Make sure all the URLs are whitelisted or nothing restricted. Any HTTPS related issues fixed, and of course make sure you have a faster internet. So these things are pretty important. The emulator itself will gladly take 1 GB. So that itself going to consume a lot of memory. That's the whole point. I never even think about downloading an emulator. I always prefer to use it on the phone. So I always prefer testing on the phone. I'm already, you will be given test phones or tablets in my case, like what I'm understanding, your real development, you will be given test phones. So we don't need to highly depend on emulator. But for this classroom, yes, we need the emulator instance to be made up and running. Without the emulator, there is no point. Okay. The couple of examples what we are going to see might have a little relevant or might have a little dependency through the emulator. Before that, I would like to say how we are going to learn Android. I'm going to separate Android into three major concepts: activity, service, broadcast receiver. The whole Android I'm going to separate into three: activity, service, broadcast receiver. Activity, where this is one of a concept and where we are going to discuss anything related to UI, anything related to user interface building, anything you are going to display, anything you are going to interact with the user. Whatever visible part is going to be covered inside the activity, and this is the extensive part because this is where we are going to study the UI development, and this is where we are going to see how to handle the user events or user experience related. This chapter or this particular concept is one of the big in Android. When compare other two, activity is going to take a lots of time and hours to complete it because it's a very huge one compared to it. The second concept, service. The service, anything related to one which is you are not going to display. Anything related what you display, I already going to cover on activity. Anything you are not going to display, or anything you are going to run behind the screen, or anything you are going to run background, going to be discussed in the concept called service. Mean it doesn't have a UI concepts, but it can have something running without having any dependency of opening your app. It's not necessary to have your application open in order to run that thing. Background related. Like your music player. You open the music player and click play a song, then close your application, but still the music playback happens. So it means something runs behind the screen, irrespective of the application open or closed. So how do I take and do something behind the screen? Those kind of concepts are going to be covered inside the concept called service. When compared to activity, the service is not going to take a longer time to understand or to start writing codes on it, because it doesn't have anything to do with the UI, but it has lots of things to do with the process. Mean without anything or without any user interference, something going to run. A longer running process related things are going to be there. For example, location aware application. Your phone always checks your location without even telling you. How do I write? Those kind of things. Like whenever you enter into a Wi-Fi zone, you are getting a notification because something running behind the screen. Keep checking. So those kind of stuffs will come in the service. Of course, activity alone wouldn't be a meaningful thing. Activity along with the service makes a lot of complex application possible. Then the third one, the broadcast receiver. The broadcast receiver, which is something to do with the phone itself, but still to do with the coding. For example, a phone is a phone. Naturally, your phone receives SMS. Somebody broadcasts something you are receiving it. So broadcast receiving means sending and receiving related. So whenever an SMS received, do you want to do something? Okay, so somebody broadcasted, you are receiving it, you receive it, take action. OTP validation. So your application detects the incoming SMS. Mean it is having a broadcast receiver, something it keeps waiting for it to come. It receives it and take action accordingly. So when certain condition arises, the broadcast receiver will work. Whenever phone call comes, whenever you go into or whenever you near that Bluetooth access area, maybe somebody trying to pair you, or whenever some specific data is ready, which is ready to be broadcasted, anything. For example, broadcast receiver, how we can connect in the concept wise mean most of the communication devices are broadcast receivers. For example, you have a radio station and you'd like to listen that particular song which is broadcasted from that radio station. What you will do, you will tune that station to that specific frequency using your radio. Once the tuning happens, the channel between you and that particular device happens, and whatever data transferred over there, broadcasted over there, your device starts receiving it. It means a kind of an entity where both the thing get connected through which a specific common channel. Your phone is already having your Airtel SIM is a channel which one connects to the nearest tower and through which the huge network has happened. So similarly, due to that channel, your phone is able to receive calls or phones. So that kind of a scenarios are going to be discussed on the broadcast receivers. It could be related to hardware, could be related to software related object also. For example, uh, I am receiving the location, latitude, longitude. The phone receives the location in occasional basis. The latitude and longitude arrived, I would like to inform the user. I can broadcast the data. Any application who has connected to my channel can pick up my data asynchronously. So that software level broadcast receiver also possible. So those concepts are going to be covered inside the broadcast receiver. So what I separated Android into three: activity, service, broadcast receiver. In the activity segment, which is a bigger concept in Android, the overall Android, anything related to UI, anything related to best practice to build the user interface, everything, whatever you are going to display, it's going to be covered inside the concept called activity, which is the major concept in compared to other two. This is the longer and time taking one because the UI design is there, the whole thing, that's where the time is going to be taken. And of course, we need to understand the Android ecosystem as well. So, how to build a UI and how to have the, your device is a tiny little one. You need to fix everything. Can't confuse the user with the various navigation. We need to plan everything while you build the application itself. So, the longest concept I would say the activity where we are going to spend time. So, UI building part, everything I'm going to cover inside. The second part, the service, what I said, the background related. And of course, the third one, the broadcast receiving related. So all three concepts put together is actually Android application development. You may be wondering, can we complete it? We can. That's the reason I already started coming into the concept. Whatever we learned will have a huge relevance. Whatever we have seen will have a huge relevance here. Same concept, inheritance, abstraction, interfaces, whole bunch of things. Not only Android, I'm trying to say, this is how an API level based application development would be. Anybody gives, hey, I have an API, you build an application on the top of it. What they are trying to say, hey, I have a classes, you either inherit it or use the abstracted scenario, implement it, or build your object, whatever I need, and then fed it to it, I'll achieve the task, whatever you want. So you know that you go there for popular gaming softwares gives the APIs. You can download the APIs, they would have given certain classes, you inherit it, modify it, change the object, create your game objects and you have your own application ready. Similarly, various other hardwares also comes with the various APIs to customize the feature. Today set-top boxes comes with the APIs through which the underlying operating system I can talk and modify and make it work. Similarly, the Android has given you the set of application programming interfaces. I'm just going to consume them to build an application of my choice. But whenever you follow an API related development, you need to understand how it has been laid off. Its architecture you need to know. During the journey, I will also explain about it. But as far as maybe at this point, Android is a modified version of Linux. That's all. A standard Linux operating system, open source BSD1, taken and slightly modified. Maybe, yes, a different virtual machine was added. I was talking about the scenario because Oracle virtual machine is not there, and I'm also not given any option to install my own virtual machine. Lots of options removed. One virtual machine of Android's choice. And additionally, some more libraries such as SQLite feature. SQLite is a standard C program where you can write a standard queries database. That's also there, and couple of other features added to make an Android. So a modified Linux is what we are going to deal with. So that we have named it as an Android. But there are architecture level, the changes have happened, but as a API level developer, we don't need to worry about it much because they have given us an interface, all we need to consume it. The provider, we need to follow their rules sometime because APIs restrict something and we cannot do that. So what I'm trying to say, yes, most of the time we can enjoy the privilege of the object-oriented programming concept, but sometime I cannot enjoy the same way I handle the plain old objects. Sometime. So activity is an object. Can I send the activity to create the instance and send it to some other function as an argument? Might not be, because I cannot treat it as an object at one point of time. So those kind of restrictions may come. So we are going to see them going further. What you are seeing here is the very first activity. Remember the word activity, I will be referring a screen instance, a frame maybe. So the similar way it is extending from app compat activity. It means this is the base frame, or maybe this is the base activity which is responsible to bring the empty frame. What we saw in the swing, a plain, a white boxed one. We don't need to define its width and height here because the form factor of the device itself is going to be the entire width and height. So we don't need to define the kind of width and height it is going to take. This particular function is something to do with the activity life cycle. Okay, a life cycle of an activity. Okay, Android related concept I'm getting into. We know activity is a frame. How long the frame lives? You know, assuming in Android, if you see this one, we call it as a launcher screen. So because launcher icons are there, by clicking it I can open an application. Remember, every applications, nothing but the UIs are list of activities. Be it application written by Google, be it application written by you, it's almost same. They are applications, just it. Everything is application in terms of Android phone. Maybe dialer is also an application. It has a broadcast receiver. Whenever phone call comes, that application opens. That's a difference it does, but still a dialer is a UI, an activity. Like that, everything is there. So assuming if I am opening one application and expecting how it is going to behave, say if I have any kind of application, let me see. Okay, this application I just opened, some temp applications are there. I just opened it. This application just display something. It has some sort of bar or convention related to Android. See here, couple of software or hardware buttons are there. So one of which, if I click, it is not showing up. And similarly, there are another button. It's called this one. That's also hides my application. So the life cycle of an activity depends on what's the user interaction happening on the top of it. I may hit back or hit home. The life cycle of that frame is ended, gone, or maybe paused. Something has happened. So understanding its state, what we are going to call as a activity life cycle. We have to think about activity life cycle for one reason, because it is not a powerful computer. Just to have every application, running application, I can see a snapshot. I cannot see because tiny little form factor. If it is a computer, I'll see a taskbar or somewhere. Okay, what is the opened application? I can see what is there running or not. But here, every application occupies the entire frame. So as a developer, you need to know whether the application is in a foreground state or it is in the background state. Background state means hidden but still running, or if the application is completely closed. These things may happen depending on the user interaction or system interaction. User interaction I just did by clicking it. I may also put the phone into sleep. That's also another one, hides my application. The battery may drain, system will disturb the activity. Or something happens to your phone which crashes something. So, or anything while you are viewing your application, suddenly a phone call arises. So, a system can also have an influence on an activity as well as the user. So, learning about this situation, what are all the things the activity undergoes, that is called activity life cycle. This function is something to do with that. Means the very first time an activity is created, that is what this function is telling, and stop there itself. It is not giving me any other information. I am going to remember, looks like this is override the word that is coming, and remember it is not compulsory to be implemented also. So it's not to get connected with the abstract scenario, because if I remove also, the compiler doesn't comply me. But the Android put that, or Android Studio put that by default while I created, because they felt something is important here. Okay, the on create, and it has some it override annotation and super tells it is a function which is there in the app compat activity, because it's the inherited one, because by seeing it we could understand that. But after the line super, anything you write becomes the overriding part, mean you start changing the behavior of the function. Here the one word, one particular statement has been written, set content view r dot layout dot activity main, something has been written. Okay, set content view, nothing but a function defined inside the app compat activity, because I just simply call it. Then what it is? Okay, r mean resource always. So r mean resource. Inside there is a folder called layout. Inside there is a file called activity main. This is what this particular file it is actually referring. R dot layout mean R is always a resource. It would be referring a resource folder. Inside one level later there is a folder called layout, and there is activity main. This is what it is referring at this point, at reference something. Okay, now let me open this activity main. Here we can create designs. There is a word hello world. This is what actually displayed. So there is a word hello world. How the design happened? It's because of a couple of XML statement what I have written here. We are going to write it. I can take you through a detailed explanation, because this is where the layouting technique starts. We'll have to lay out it. We'll come back to that. But what it actually tries, when the very first time activity is created, it attaches the design. That's it. This is what it has done. So when a very first time an activity created, it attached the design. That's the reason you are going to see some design. So I'm going to run this one to show you. I hit the run button. Now it is asking me to connect a device, because I already connected my device. The code will be installed on my device directly. If you have an emulator, it will install on the emulator. The choice will be given to you. So which one? If you have more than one emulator or more than one device connected, you will always able to pick the device which you want to install. So here, typically what will happen when I hit the run button, the compilation starts, bytecode generation happens, and it has to be fed as a kind of executable which is required for a runtime JVM in this phone. I am not sure about which JVM, because Android has moved from Dalvik to Android its own runtime. Now they build their own runtime or build their own JVM. So it prepares something which is required for it. So bytecode preparation happens and some packaging also happening. Once it is done, the application will get automatically installed on your phone, because I have connected through the USB. So design what I am seeing in the hello world, and couple of things also I am seeing, we'll come back to that. This hello world was possible because of the set content view. If I remove this or uncomment it, I'm not going to see it. So it looks like on create is a function automatically gets called somewhere, and this invokes the set content view and prepares the design. So I'm just commented that line. I'm trying to run it. You know that once you run, you would have to wait, because there are kind of a process in between. So you may not expect a result immediately. well, tiny little time. It's not going to be a considerable amount of time. Macs usually perform pretty well on this scenario rather than a Windows one. See that I don't see any design because I commented the set content view. So on create is the inference what it is giving when the very first time activity is created, the system is invoking, or maybe the SDK or any the API was laid out is invoking this particular function. We have various activity life cycles. In that, very few are important life cycle functions I am going to implement. On resume, on pause, on stop. I just implement couple of functions because I know about them, because the document is also talking about it. These are all the functions defined inside app compared activity. I am trying to, since I inherited, I can implement them. Probably I can modify the behaviors also. But few things. Creation, resuming, pausing, stopping, destroy looks like a kind of a pattern. From the creation to destruction, there are a couple of kind of scenarios we have kept. I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to put system out println statement. And put them across all. I just put the console statements. Would like to know when which one is getting called. So just I put them, going to fire them device and see. Okay, this is going to be console output. So remember the console output has been defined here as a logcat. Okay, the word logcat tab would be there on the bottom. Just press in order to get access to the console. Remember the console will be printing a huge number of things because the real device I have connected. Not only my application, there are various applications are there in my device will be printing various console outputs. So it's a system now. Okay, now this is my package name. This is something related to system printing something else. I'm not very clear about why those things happen, maybe for a device specific. But what I'm seeing here, on create and on resume call means my application is running now. Application was installed. It executed a statement on create and on resume means it has called a function on create and also it has called on resume function because the output has been printing here. Now I'm going to hit this button. What we call this button? Home. Okay, what is this button?
Back.
What's the difference between them?
The previous windows. Back takes us to the previous activity and home takes us to the launcher.
Like there's a stack over it that's recording every information.
And
Back will take you to the topmost one,
Hmm.
and a home button will take you to the
Bottom of the
launcher.
slide.
Home
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Yeah. Inference is correct. In fact, but technically speaking, the home button.
It will store everything inside a stack and then it will just navigate to the previous one by copying the present activity.
बैक बटन इज टाइप ऑफ अ लिंक लिस्ट मतलब कि एक से इट इज कनेक्टेड one to each and every node is connected, so back will move to the back portion. It is basically a linked list.
So what technically home is doing?
Home is taking back us to the home screen.
Home screen.
To the
Okay.
Home
launcher.
is just connected to the first node. It is basically a
So back
a list circular node that is connected to the first one.
It is not
So home
compulsory
किया
that
तो
back
सीधा
will
first
not
पे आ
take
गए,
directly to home.
else linked list में एक step back किया.
Okay. Okay. Now connect with this activity. Now I'm going to hit home button. hitting home button will, what will happen to this activity?
Pause the activity.
Okay. It paused, as you said. It also stopped. Okay. Means other two functions were executed. But if you notice that it did not destroy.
Remain destroyed.
So means
The back button will end.
that's a different problem. But at least the home button did not destroy. So our application is still running somewhere behind the screen. The stack has gone somewhere, as you said. It has lost the visibility, but the application is still running. Means if you have a form filling, you are filling the form, suddenly hit the home button, and again go back and launch your icon again, open your application, you will get back the form thing whatever you entered.
It's still having its.
Yeah, because somewhere it maintains the memory, it runs. So the home necessarily keeps the application somewhere behind the screen, only loses the visibility. The activity lost the visibility, but the activity is running. One. Second, our inference about pause and stop is slightly confusing here. Pause is meaningful. What the hell is stop? One. And we also have one more word, activity lifecycle, which is saying that destroy. Okay, we'll come back to that. Now I am going to open my application back. Remember, I press home button. So what's the name I wrote for this one? No, not the one. That's different one I wrote.
So it's a hello
T1,
world.
this is the first one, top left.
It's a hello world. Hello world.
Hello world something I wrote. I remember. Okay, that's the one for different team I wrote that one. Okay, so hello world. I'm just going to press it. Okay. Something has happened.
On resume call.
It called on resume. Okay. Things started from on create and it called on resume. See that? I hit the home button, then I saw these two unexecuted. And again I went to the launcher, tried to bring my application back, and I'm seeing on resume. So something from on stop to the life cycle went back to on resume. Okay. Looks like from invisible to visible scenario happens. Okay. Now let's do something. Now I'm going to hit back button. On stop, on pause, destroy is also got. I hit the back button. It goes into a flow. It's not simply calls them. Try to pause it, then stop it, then destroy it. Okay, difference between the stop, pause and stop we will see, but at least it follows certain pattern. But this time destroy has been called, so I can safely assume my activity is no more. It's completely destroyed. Any object or any forms you were filling, anything you were doing on the activity, gone. Now if I try to open it again, things start from on create on receive. First time what I saw. So what probably I can infer from here, on create is called only once. The very first time when I open the application. Similarly, on destroy is called only once when the application getting closed. If on destroy is called, application starts from on create. If on destroy is not called, application starts from on receive. There is a pattern. You would have to test and verify it first. And understanding this pattern makes a very important thing, so that you can either think about backup your data, that user will be doing sensitive thing. Not to hit the back button, suddenly phone call also may come. You may be seeing your application, suddenly phone call comes. So phone call is the higher priority one. Naturally, take your application back. As if you hit the home button only. The stack somewhere loses the visibility. Other application may come on the top of it. So in that time what happens? You may need to do some options inside your application. Assuming you are doing a music playback on the application, if some other application comes, you need to pause the music placement. The system may try to play it, so it's a developer has to stop that. Okay, the screen has now the on pause has been called. There is no point of playing it back. Or sometimes the user may be filling a complex form. Suddenly, mistakenly, he may press back button. In that case, the developer has to identify. Okay, he has certain thing left. We need to back it up. Take a backup so that the user again comes and can get back. So decision making scenarios will be happening with respect to the activity lifecycle. We really don't have a cross button or close button or something to exactly identify what is happening. Based on the user interference or based on the system interference, the activity lifecycle may go in various scenarios, but using this pattern alone. Let us see what are all they. On create is called very first time when activity is created. So that's the best time to attach our design. Initialize our objects. Like if I have a text view, text fields, initialize everything. Because we don't need to depend on constructor, because I cannot treat this guy as a simple plain old Java object. He's an API guy now. Because Android recommends it. Keep your on create as a initializing point, because this is the one where the frame is launched and underlying object can be initialized. So
this is activity main dot Java, not XML. It is from Java.
it's an XML. File extension is not been defined. It's actually XML. Okay, so in this case, create is called the very first time when activity is created or first time launched. And not only it calls, it also moves immediately to on receive. After executing on create, it also, if you notice that, both are coming as a pair only. Nowhere I see on create alone called. On create and then on receive. You will always see this pattern. It means the creation completed and application can be paused or resumed, can be done anything. So that's the inference you need to make. It doesn't mean it's actually resumed. It is just a callback hook saying that, assuming you have something wrong in your layout, something wrong, the activity will not proceed to resume. It will halt there itself. So the on resume could be a confirmation that the creation went successful. So the next subsequent block it moves, confirming the previous block completed successfully. Somewhere if you notice the on create alone gets called and it doesn't move on, something wrong in your layout. Maybe, we may make some mistakes over there. So it is a kind of a confirmation. And remember, application waits there because no further functions have been called afterwards until see now if you notice that some other application came, it's an advertisement came on the top of it. So in that case, if you notice that activity has moved, yeah, pause and kind of a stop also would have called. So in this case, there are a couple of things these guys are doing. I brought my application back here. Okay. So in this case, the application is doing couple of flows. So create is the first time the layout becomes visible. So you can treat it, for example, if you guys are developed what you call JavaScript something, it is more or less like document ready kind of thing. It means your activity is ready. You can start initializing its objects. So that's a create. And it is cleverly, the create is called only once until it destroyed. So I can safely initialize objects over there. If it goes behind the screen, come back, I don't need to worry about it. Okay, resume a kind of a confirmation that the creation went successful or the stop went successful because it is resuming its something. The pause and the stop has a huge difference. I can probably tell, assuming I am going to press this one. How did the activity disappear? Slowly it went and totally became invisible. There was a delay, right? From the visible state to invisible state. If you have a slow motion, probably you would have identified. It was slowly became invisible. The on pause is the state what I can say the activity is still visible but it is beginning to disappear. Mean started going just down. So the pause is the microsecond time where the activity is starting the process of becoming invisible. Means it is slightly visible, not fully visible. One point of time totally become invisible, that's the point what we are calling it a on stop. So on pause is the beginning to disappear phase, and once the completely disappears the on stop. So it is also confirming, okay, your application successfully became invisible. The on pause. On
The
stop.
app coming down, isn't that an animation?
Animation related, but if it is not animation also, that shutting down or making invisible state, it takes certain time. During that time, your activity will be visible. Nothing, animation is nothing but something related to a delay only.
Correct.
But anyway, that VGA part does something from the visible state to invisible. It is going because all the frames, some blinks only happening. The frames are blinking there. So one point of time, it will be still visible and it started disappearing. Somewhere it could be this way or any way we can infer. But one phase, the invisible state is going to take a microsecond. So within that time, the activity may be visible for a fraction of a second. That is the one, the pause. And the stop is the confirming one, hey, your application is completely invisible. Remember, invisible only I am going to talk, I am not sure about it is completely destroyed. On stop tells, okay, your application is no more visible now.
So the on pause tells us the process, things that we have to do when the app starts, destroying itself, disappearing
Disappear.
itself. And on destroys when the app has stopped. Then what we should do?
Okay, we will see that. For example, on stop, application invisible now. But if the control doesn't move to on destroy, I am sure that application is running somewhere.
Okay.
The memory kept it is running. So in my case, okay, the user might have pressed a home button, or maybe a phone call would have come, an advertisement would have taken over, or you might have toggled to some other application. Anything maybe. So in this case, on stop could be a place where I can say the view is completely invisible. But it doesn't move to destroy mean I'm sure I can get back. So now assume I hit the home button alone. Now I'm going to go back and try to open my application maybe through this way also.
So what kind of work can be done on pause and on stop?
We'll think about it. Looks like I may need to back up somewhere, maybe in on destroy, if at all required, or somewhere even in on stop also I can back up, no problem. See, kind of a conviction part based on application we can think about it. But at least the application giving me certain hooks. Hey, you can see the state and what happened to the activity. Based on that, we may decide about it. But at least here, now I try to resume it. Means my application was running behind the screen, it just resumed. So this cycle is going to be repeated. If I hit back button, it will go stop and finally destroy. If a destroy call, naturally your application will start from on create. This pattern you need to understand very clearly. I would want you to test it, run it on your device or emulator, play around with that. Remember, only 5 active lifecycle functions I have implemented. There are a couple of in-betweens also there. But to make a clarity, the very important lifecycle functions I have implemented. But as a programmer, or maybe while you write your application, you may not depend on all those things. What is dependable only you will implement and try to use it. This is just for testing, we put all the lifecycle methods. Sometimes I don't need to take a backup and I don't really need to think about it.
So what is the state when we hit the third button?
This one.
This one.
This is typically a vendor customized button, one. Okay.
Because the screen is visible, so it goes on pause or on stop.
If a screen is invisible, naturally it would have reached on stop. Okay. Now if you see that,
The screen is visible when you
now it is visible. What happened? I pressed that button because I am planning to move to some other thing. But what really happened? If you see that, on pause and stop. because it just maintains a snapshot. It's not an exact activity. Some screenshot suddenly took it and kept it. But technically, the application went behind in running. So it is customized one. Remember, I took a Nexus one because I want to show you the vanilla Android. Okay. Samsung, but the behavior would not be changed. But the third button usually vendor customized. They might have a different purpose to do that also. So anyway, if the application become invisible, mean it would have called the on stop. If it proceeded to destroy, mean it's gone. Or if it is not, maybe it is running in the behind the screen. That's all. So these kind of hooks Android gives us and tells the state of the particular activity. We are going to build it from here. Next, I am going to move on to a layout, going to create some design. And of course, same, I'm going to put buttons, checkboxes, text fields, everything, add the event listener, call them. And here I'm going to do little further. From one activity, I will launch another activity. From another activity, communicate between the activity. We're going to make it. For example, you are creating a application which asks the login screen first, comes login. But also you give a registration button. When you click on it, the user goes to registration button, activity. There he fills a form, click submit. Once he is done, successfully registered, take the username from it, display in the first screen again, and let the user enter the password. Click submit, validate it, take it to another activity. These things will happen. The flow we are going to do it here. To make that happen, we need to know about the activity lifecycle. That is very important to start with. Okay, fine. 125 now. So we'll go for a